So I'm going to introduce our next panel now. So first we have Caroline Trishita, and she's a policy analyst at the National Skills Coalition, a public policy advocacy organization based here in DC, focused on creating skills training policies that support workers and businesses. Caroline analyzes workforce development policies at the federal level, communicating with Congress and the administration, and works with the National Skills Coalition's network of workforce stakeholders, including community colleges, workforce boards, national organizations, and community-based organizations. Next up is Dr. Megan McBride. She's the Vice President for Adult Education at Georgia Piedmont Technical College in Georgia, and an alumni advisor to our board of directors for COAID. She's an accomplished speaker and educator with a unique perspective on the power of adult education. As a former adult learner who obtained her GED, she understands firsthand the transformative impact that literacy education can have on an individual's life. And then we have Anson Green. He's a workforce development trailblazer, leading economic opportunity efforts at Tyson Foods and developing career pathways for Tyson's 127,000 frontline team members. Prior to Tyson, Anson was the adult education state director in Texas, and before that, he directed a college campus designed specifically to train immigrant and refugee workers in San Antonio, where he lives. In 2020, he was the Coalition on Adult Basic Education's Outstanding Administrator of the Year. So welcome, my second panel. So I'm going to ask all three of you to answer this first question. And that's just how you work within adult education. Kind of what's your role or connection to adult education? If you want to start, Caroline.
Sure. Hi everyone, good morning. Once again, I'm Caroline Trishita with National Skills Coalition. And thanks so much to Regina and COAID for hosting this really important panel. So National Skills Coalition, as Regina mentioned, we're really just focused on workforce development. And as someone mentioned in the last panel, you can't have workforce development without adult education. They are synonymous. And so adult education really crosses a lot of our policy issue areas. Digital equity is one, so making sure our adult learners have the digital skills they need to be a part of our workforce and to get into good jobs. Our research shows that basically every single job that you can get nowadays requires you to know how to use either a laptop or another digital device. So making sure our adult learners have access to digital skills. It crosses the policy issue area of infrastructure. We just got this huge investment in our infrastructure. Who's going to be building those roads and installing that broadband? Our adult learners. It also crosses the issue area of our post-secondary institutions, making sure that our adult learners have the wraparound supports that they need to complete training programs. And all of that sort of falls under the bucket of workforce transformation. Unfortunately, we know that there are inequitable outcomes in our workforce development system for marginalized groups. So for workers of color, immigrant workers, workers with low literacy skills, we know that they're not quite getting the outcomes of some of their more educated or higher educated or even white counterparts. So we want to make sure that our workforce system centers and prioritizes folks who have been historically marginalized and underserved by public policies in the past. And I'll just close with a specific example of how we work with adult educators. Some of you might be familiar with ScaleLit. They're formerly the Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition. They're really the one-stop operator for all adult learners across Chicago. And they're just located a couple miles away from one of the largest prisons in Chicago. So folks, enter into prison, serve their time, 10 years, they come out, they haven't even used a cell phone, they have no idea kind of what a modern job training landscape looks like. So those are really the folks that we work with, those adult educators, to again make sure that folks who've been marginalized have access to skills training to be a part of our economy.
Hello everyone, I'm excited this morning to offer you another fun Southern accent. I am from the booming metropolis of Moultrie, Georgia in Southwest Georgia, but I currently live outside of Atlanta, where I'm the program administrator for a large adult literacy program just east of the city. I'm also a former adult learner, as Regina mentioned. I got my GED in the year 2000, so almost 23 years ago now. It was in December of 2000. after dropping out of high school as a consequence of 3 teenage pregnancies before the age of 16. My current role, as I mentioned, is the program administrator for a Title II funded program. It is a very large program, relatively speaking. We serve over 2,000 learners every fiscal year. Over half of our learners are English language learners. A quarter of our learners are refugees. We're in a refugee resettlement city, the most diverse square mile in the country, Clarkston, Georgia. And then about half of our students are working on their GED or high school equivalency. The figures are actually still up here on the levels. 99.7% of our students are basic skills deficient, meaning they read at or below the 8th grade level. 95% of our students read at or below the 6th grade level, which is at level 3. And 56% of our students read at the 4th grade level or lower, which is at level 2. So that's kind of the program I serve. I also have the honor of serving as the the alumni advisor to the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, COAE.
Well, good afternoon or morning to you folks today. Hanson Green with Tyson Foods. I feel like I don't know if I'm at a family reunion or if I'm at a business meeting because I have family in Moultrie, Georgia. And in the previous panel, we didn't plan this. Alex in the Shelby County program is a program that we work with Tyson Foods. And Hector, who was here from Kansas, who used to be our director at our plant in Finney, Kansas. So it shows you how much Tyson Foods is dedicated to adult education. So you know what we do. We make about 20% of the protein that's in American supermarkets and on your table. Chicken, beef, pork, you name it. Jimmy Dean, Hillshire Farms, all those things are Tyson products. But when I think about adult education, I think it's best defined by our workers. And you can define our workers by their diversity. We, in our plants in rural America largely, South, rural America, Texas, have at least 60 different countries represented and about 50 different languages within those countries. And so you can go to Finney, Kansas, where Hector's from, and find 29 or 30 languages in that plant in the middle of agriculture sector there, Central Kansas. Our workforce, though, is it's kind of bifurcated. You've got of that immigrant population, about 10% of them have college degrees, but about 12% have never been to public school, any schooling at all. And so when you think of a high advanced manufacturing corporation like Tyson, you can define Tyson as really a technology company that makes protein, but our workforce is very diverse. And so we work with adult education through what is undoubtedly the largest public-private partnership for adult education in America, through integrating with programs that you've heard from today and providing classes within our plants. ESL classes, digital literacy classes, citizenship classes. And we do those things within a larger framework of support. You heard all the previous speakers talk about supportive services. Well, we know that adult education can't do that alone to create stability in our workforce. So we provide transportation services, we have child cares in our plants, we pay for the citizenship test, we pay for high school equivalency tests. So we're trying to do our part as a corporation in partnership, because we know the adult education community knows the community the best and knows those workers the best. And so we love that local design with our partnerships, and it really served us well.
Thanks, Olivia. So I'm going to skip to my third question for you, Anson, and that's, how could adult education connections help you find workers? Like, how can we do more in the country, like what Tyson's doing? How can businesses do more?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I will speak beyond Tyson, because I do work with lots of businesses that are like-minded in terms of demands and needs, but they're not partnering with adult education. And I think a lot of that is an awareness situation where they just don't know these services exist. But I can tell you, it's not just about finding workers. Our work is largely focused around finding them, but also retaining them and growing them within Tyson. Let's take you back to Kansas. When you're in the middle of Garden City, Kansas, there's not a huge workforce to draw from. Our plant there has 3,800 workers in a town that's just a little bit bigger than that. And so we need to be able to grow that workforce through integrated programs that the Senator mentioned at the very beginning, that integrate technical training, automation training, digital skills with the basic skills. Because we need to keep that plant growing and advancing so we can compete in the world and compete in America. So I think that connectivity to the system is the best kept secret in the country. And businesses, I can tell you, when I get on the phone calls with them sometimes, they are dying to find ways to advance and find workers, but also advance the workers that they have. And for me, the question of like why adult education, and to me it's an economic imperative for the United States. If we want to remain competitive, we want our states and our local communities to remain competitive, we've got to be able to grow the workers, and we've got to be able to, the workers that are there are the ones that we need to better skill so that the companies can advance and compete with their neighbors and compete with other countries that would like to take our production sometimes overseas.
Thanks, Anson. And I'm going to make a shameless plug for COAB's podcast, Behind Every Employer, which Anson is the host.
Thank you very much.
Speaking with other businesses that are also doing the same kind of great work and connecting to adult education that Tyson is. So thanks for doing that podcast for us, Anson. So I'm going to ask this to Megan and Caroline. How can WIOA federal legislation and policies help colleges transition more adult ed students into college?
Okay. Yeah, such a great question. I kind of want to pull out something that Anson mentioned, which is really just the idea of partnerships. As was mentioned in the last panel, I'm sure everyone in this room has had someone come into their office, a business owner saying, I can't fill a job, I've had this posting up for 6 months, I can't find a skilled worker to fill this job. And the question is, what's like the policy solution to that problem? And I think the idea really there is partnerships, an industry partnership led by a business in conjunction with a job training provider, an adult educator, a community-based organization. Currently, there's no dedicated funding for those kinds of partnerships, an industry or sector partnership under WIOA, so there's a really great chance to update that legislation and include some dedicated funding. Yeah, I'll stop there.
All right, as I often do, I'm going to kind of weave personal story into my response. It may come as no surprise to some of you who know me that I was a very precocious little girl. I enjoyed going to school, doing school stuff. And then I got pregnant at 14 years old, and I lost my confidence. I dropped out of school. I didn't think I belonged in college. I didn't think I could go to college. Even when I got my GED, I thought I wouldn't belong. I thought I couldn't take the math classes successfully. And many of our students feel that way. I can relate to the way that they feel. They think they can't go to college, that even if they pass the GED, they can't handle the rigor of the classes. And so in our program, we try to help them as much as we can prepare to go to college. And I'm going to land the plane in a minute. Let me circle just a second. So what we see in adult ed, and Alex kind of mentioned this when he was responding to Toby's question about the money, our students really need concurrency. They need overlap. If they want to go to college, it's not the way it was 20 years ago when I got my GED. I went to the college and got my GED, and then I went to the university and got a degree. Our students need things to go faster for one, but for two, they need the support from us. One thing about them not having a lot of tact is they also are shamelessly honest with us about the things that they need. So what we do in adult ed is we iterate all the time, and we're very crafty and creative in the context of having very little money to do it. So our students told us, we don't know how to use Excel when we get to these college classes. We don't know how to make a PowerPoint. We don't know how to attach a document to an email or to our learning management system. How do you do all that stuff? And so they come back to us. And so our teachers, they came to me and they said, our students are going to college and they can't do all these things. How can we help? And so we put together a digital literacy course that is a bridge to the credit program. So if you want to go to college, you can enroll in our free digital literacy course, and we're doing all of this with the money we have. I call us hustlers. We are always hustling for free stuff and for people to give us money to do things. Our teachers do more other duties as assigned than they do their regular job. So WIOA can help us by giving us funds to provide that digital literacy. That's just one example of the struggles our students have with going to college. Is their digital literacy skills are often as low as their literacy and numeracy skills, and that also translates to participating meaningfully in the workforce.
Thanks for your answers, those were great. And Megan and I tried to solve all of the college transition woes last night after we arrived in over a piece of Watergate cake. Yum. All right, so I'm going to ask now Anson and Caroline to kind of answer the same question, but it related to business. So how can WIOA and federal legislation and policies help businesses succeed?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. The federal adult education law as it is now, the Adult Education Family Literacy Act, can be defined in terms of how kind of archaic it is by one number, or really two numbers. The references to digital literacy in the law. Can somebody guess how many digital literacy references would be in the law? That was two. Very good. There's two references to digital literacy in a law that was passed in 2014, years after the iPhone came out. And so, and those are in definitions. They're not. There's no strategy. And so, when I think of what we do at work, how our company is progressing in becoming digitally enabled and using automation and expanding, we're spending $1.5 billion on automation. You remember the workforce I described. We've got to have the workforce that can use that automation. And that's what my job is. My job title is digital and upskilling, digital and automation upskilling. That's what I do. But it's for immigrants and refugees. And so we've got to get the law aligned with where businesses are and where the workers are. And it is woefully out of line now. The Senator mentioned the performance model at the beginning. The performance model is probably even more archaic than the two references to digital literacy. And we treasure what we measure. And yeah, and we were measuring in a model that was really designed. It was designed 20 something years ago, but it's really using a model that's 30 or 40 years old. And so we've got to really rethink the law, and I love a lot of things that are in the Adult Education Works Act, because they are going to really make a transitional leap that we need to make in terms of service delivery.
And I'll add on there, of course, National Skills Coalition, not a business, but we work very closely with small and medium-sized businesses across the country. And they're a huge part of our network, making sure they have a common place to advocate for their skills training needs. And adult education can really help businesses succeed because, for one thing, providing upskilling opportunities while folks are on the job can help businesses avert layoffs. And layoffs are really expensive. And hiring someone else, that's an expensive cost, especially for small and mid-sized businesses. And where kind of government and public policy falls is it's great when a very large company can afford to upskill their workforce on the job. But for these smaller companies, they don't always have the capacity, the HR, the resources to upskill on the job. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the American Rescue Plan offered a lot of opportunities for states and small businesses to use funds in creative ways. In Michigan, one of the ways they did that was kind of creating a pool of money for small and mid-sized businesses to retain their talent, to keep their talent. And one of our partners, Greg May, who works in Indiana, he owns a software company there. Again, he works very closely with re-entering citizens, and he was able to use that money in Michigan to keep folks on the job, to get them scaled up. That way he was able to avoid laying off people who didn't have the skills to continue on their career pathway, and then workers themselves are able to stay in jobs. So I would say adult education allows businesses to keep and retain talent, And that's important across industries. I gave a tech analysis, a tech example, but that's true for construction, manufacturing, etc.
All right, we're gonna go straight to talk about the money then, right? Is that what you want? You wanna know, your members wanna know what it is you came here for, right? We really want members to support the Adult Education Works Act. It's the, revamped, rethinking, rethought WIOA reauthorization. We feel like, after listening to the field, teachers, students, our partner organizations, that we have, an amended and an edited version that is much better, stronger, and is going to take us into the future. We are looking for sponsors, co-sponsors, and support for the Adult Education Works Act. We are also asking for support and co-sponsors in the Strengthening Research in Adult Education Act. And we're also asking members for support and appropriations of $810 million or billion, whatever. If you make that little mistake when you're taking the notes, it's okay. For funding for the state grants for adult education. So what I hope everyone has heard today is that adult education is really critical to our economy and to the workforce development that everyone, bipartisan, wants for America. The WIOA goals, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity goals, really cannot be realized without adult education at the table. We are key to WIOA, the whole system working. And adult education is an entry point, and maybe sometimes the only entry point for justice-involved individuals, for refugees, for immigrants like my mom, for folks who don't finish high school like Megan. It's the entry point into a better life. It transforms not only our students, but their families and their communities. So thank you all for coming.